Okay. Okay, I think we're ready to call the meeting to order. And then we'll go to number 2, a motion to approve the agenda, please.
I would like to make a motion to amend the agenda to push item number 3, select a chair and co-chair for 2017 down to our last item until we have all the members of the commission here for the meeting.
All right.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Somebody, aye. We'll move it down to before number 8. Over here. Right. Okay, so moving on to number 4, which is the approval of the minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the March 20, 2017 joint session meeting minutes.
We have to approve them separately?
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
I'll make a second motion.
Oh,
Any amendments? I mean, everybody's good with it?
I have none.
Motion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 And we can make a motion to approve the March 20th Planning Commission meeting minutes.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
You need a second?
Oh, do
I'll second. Oh, that was loud, sorry.
we have to all in favor again? We're good? Okay. Okay, on to item number 5, opening the public hearing, or this is a public hearing. We don't open it yet? Or we
Not yet.
open it?
Not yet. I'll give an introduction
Perfect.
first. So before you this evening, members of the commission, are 3 items related to the meadows at Spring Creek, which is being proposed by Trinity Development and Vincent Bluffs at Carver. They're requesting a rezoning from agricultural and industrial to R2 residential, along with a planned residential development overlay on top of that and a preliminary plat. The project consists of just over 50 acres located on the south side of Spring Creek Drive, east of the existing Spring Creek neighborhood. The developer is proposing to construct 2 types of housing units on the site. There will be single-family homes that are similar in lot size to homes that you already have existing in the Spring Creek neighborhood. Those are predominantly along the southern portion of the property, as well as a small, about 11 of them adjacent to Spring Creek Drive, providing some transition from the existing Spring Creek neighborhood. The rest of the homes would be a villa-type home, which is something that you really haven't seen here in Carver yet. It's a smaller lot size with smaller setbacks on the side yard between the homes, and it gives you a little bit more density than you have had with your typical single-family dwellings on the site. This the requested R2 zoning district is compatible with the previously I'll call it tentatively approved comprehensive plan amendment to low-density residential. That plan amendment isn't completed yet. It's at the Met Council for review. We haven't heard any comments back yet from the Met Council on that plan amendment, but this would be effective after City Council approves it, and only if that comp plan amendment is approved by the Met Council. The way that the developer is proposing this, the villa homes would have an HOA, and it's sort of a cross between a single-family neighborhood and a townhome neighborhood, where the villa homes would have lawn care and snow removal of the driveways that are provided as part of the HOA, but not the exterior of the homes like you would see in a townhome neighborhood. And then I believe they're not proposing for the single-family homes to be covered, the regular single-family homes to be within an HOA, at least at this point in time. They are asking, as part of the planned residential development process, for some variations from your standard R2 zoning. In particular, the side yard setbacks for the villas, they're asking for a reduction from the side yard setback from 7.5 feet to 5 feet, and to have that 5 feet measured to the foundation wall of the building. Your ordinance requires that a setback is basically clear from ground to sky. So if you have a bump out or an eave on the building, that would all get counted and measured towards the setback. So they're asking that it just go to the foundation wall. This results in it's a really close, distance between the homes in that area, but it's a very popular type of unit that's been successful in other parts of the metro area. They're also then requesting on the villa product that the lot size be reduced from your minimum of 7,000 square feet down to a minimum of 6,000 square feet. Staff is recommending approval of the rezoning along with the planned residential development. We combine those typically into one resolution in motion. That's why they're two items, but you see them together in your packet. From a preliminary plat standpoint, sort of an overview of the preliminary plat is on the screen. You can see that there is a proposed two ways into the development as proposed. There would be one access to Spring Creek Drive, sort of towards the eastern side of the property. And then there is also a proposed connection from the existing Green Ash Drive where it terminates in a temporary cul-de-sac in the Spring Creek neighborhood eastward into this property. There is a gap of land between where Spring Creek terminates today and the Butler property, which is the subject of this application, that's about 16.5 feet wide, that they currently do not have control over from an ownership interest standpoint. That's something that would have to be reconciled before this preliminary plat could be approved. But that is something that's being looked at and worked on. The other items that might interest you, you can see we also have a stub to the south, to the property to the south. Some of you in the past have heard that referred to as the Gilbert development property. That was sold a couple months ago to a different gentleman, but it provides one access into that property. That property then is surrounded by bluffs, so it would be the only way in and out of that property, most likely. And there's various wetlands on the site that are tentatively delineated, but we still have to complete the wetland delineation process because the growing season just started and now we can actually do that. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions you have. Todd Cushman with Trinity Development is here and may want to give a presentation as well. I invite him up here at this time, and then we'd ask that you open the public hearing and we can take public comments and answer questions.
Hi, my name is Todd Cushman with Trinity Development, and thank you again for having me here. We're here at the concept plan stage, and we're very excited to be moving forward through preliminary plat. And again, we are a developer that focuses on residential development and also apartment, market rate apartment and senior housing opportunities. We have a number of developments around the Twin Cities area that are similar to this type of product, where we work with some of the larger builders and work with their products that seem to be very popular in the Twin Cities area. And that's kind of how we have decided on this type of product in the development, where we're focusing on the villa product, which again is a detached product. Really is a good product that allows the homeowners to have a single-family house. They're usually just one story. The villa is a one-story product, and they don't have the maintenance that's involved with a standard single-family house, but it is still a detached, so they're not really in the townhouse where they have an attached product. So they usually like to have higher amenities in the house with less maintenance, And so less yard work, less snow removal, and that's why we have an association that is involved and monitors the whole development very closely. And then it's nice to have a little variety also for some single-family, standard single-family, two-story houses in the development. So that's what we're proposing, and that's what we're looking at, and thought would be a good fit here. The builders that we're working with and looking at have other projects similar around town here, just a little bit to the west and a little bit to the north, that are very similar to this type of project. Be happy to answer any questions.
Can you just remind us of the number of single-family homes versus villas that are set up in here? Ballpark.
It's about 150 total, and we're looking at about 2/3 villas and about 1/3 single-family.
Could you identify them on this diagram, which are the homes, and which would
The
be
homes,
the villas, which would be in an HOA?
Yes, the single-family homes are going to be running along the south side, so pretty much everything along the north or along the south side running from east to west with the cul-de-sac. And then there is some single-family homes on the north side along Spring Creek on the west side that helps transition from the existing neighborhood there. And then everything kind of coming down in the middle from Spring Creek Drive and in the middle area is going to be the villa product.
Is Lot 53 a villa or a home, single-family home?
Single-family.
Lot 52? To the north of it?
Yeah, I'm looking at that one, trying to see if that one, I believe that's still a single-family. Depends on the size. We're usually looking at about a 50-foot wide lot for the villas and a 60-foot for the single-family.
That's the width, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Cindy, is there any concerns as far as the lot size or the new, take on the lot size with this type of development? I mean, besides changing the ordinance requirements?
No, and you've frequently made variations to your ordinance by using the planned residential development process, and staff doesn't have an issue with this, especially if you think about it in terms of that alternatively, we could be doing townhomes, which then you have basically a 0-foot setback, and we make an exception that way. So it's just a matter of how it's designed, and we have to make sure that, because it will be so tight, we are requesting that an as-built foundation survey be completed at the time that the foundation is installed, so that we can make sure that the setbacks are met, because the 5-foot setback is going to coincide with the drainage and utility easement, and so we don't want to have any encroachments going either way. But we're confident that this can be accomplished, and we've seen it in other locations.
Can you comment on the price point of the single-family homes and the villas?
Yeah, again, the single family is going to be very similar to what you've seen around town here with some of the other developments. I would say that's going to be anywhere from the $375,000 to $450,000 price range, depending on amenities. And the villas are going to be very similar to that also.
Okay.
I have a question, just trying to get a visual on that 5-foot. The DDK villas, do you know what the distance is between them?
Offhand, I don't, but that is the closest product that we have to being similar to this. And if you recall, that neighborhood was actually a replat from a townhome neighborhood. And so we were trying to make the existing private road infrastructure that was installed for the townhomes work with a small villa-type single family. So it's very similar, but I can't comment specifically on the setbacks.
Okay.
Cindy, you mentioned about the zoning of the property and that there was already a submission into Met Council about an amendment. What drove that? Can you refresh my memory?
Yes, the existing comprehensive plan for 2030 guides this property as medium-density residential, which would have required a minimum of 4 units per acre.
Right.
And they're going to come in somewhere between 3 and 3.5, depending on what we can ultimately take out and not count for acreage on this property. So because they were coming in less than 4, we needed to do a comp plan amendment in order to allow a development of this type.
Okay. I thought you also mentioned that there was, some of the land was zoned industrial.
Correct. Part of the existing property is zoned industrial. There's the current property owners have a conditional use permit for some, if you go out to the site, you'll see that there's mounds of dirt and some things like that on there, and that industrial zoning dates back a couple decades on that site, and it coincides with their conditional use permit. It wasn't necessarily that it's intended for this to be industrial long-term. It's recognizing the existing uses on the property and allowing those to be maintained while they were what they were. So as part of this, we'd revoke the existing conditional use permit at the same time that a final plat's recorded.
Understood. So on all 4 sides, really, it's either already zoned residential or planned to be.
Correct. And the long-range plan has always had it as one type of residential.
Okay.
And not industrial. So it wouldn't have been allowed to expand into some different industrial use.
Okay, perfect. That helps me. Thank you.
I have another question on the placement of the villas or townhouses or single-family homes. So looking at what would back up to the homes on Green Ash Drive, are those, sorry, I know I'm kind of looking in both spots. I can see the same diagram here. So like lot 35, 34, 36?
Those would be villas.
Okay. They're substantially smaller than the Green Ash properties.
They're not as wide, but if you look at the depth of the properties, they're about the same depth.
But square feet wise, that's what you're asking for, the 6,000 square feet
Yes.
versus 7,
Yes.
Because they're narrower.
to be able to do that.
Because they're narrower, yeah. I'm struggling a little bit with seeing the separation between HOA-maintained properties and individual homeowner-maintained properties. Have you done anything similar like this where it's so mixed and so close?
Yes, I know the builder that we're working with has a number of developments around the Twin Cities that have that. And it is a very good mix to have that because it allows a couple different types of products in that
Oh,
area.
certainly, yeah.
And everything, and that's what really helps out. So it allows that to have some of those maintained, less maintenance, less yards, less, snow removal and everything, but still then have the people who want to have that swing set in the backyard and have some of those other things that you won't be able to have in association maintained.
I guess my point was more they're right next to each other, right? I'm not sure I've seen that in other developments in here in
Joy?
Carver, right? Where there's either been a street difference or something, right?
Joy?
Between those two
Yeah, I
types.
thought of that too, but we actually do have that on
We
Lorraine
do.
Court and Ironwood.
Okay.
I'm missing a
Where
street
they're
name.
literally right next to each other?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Yeah, the Lylewood Glen neighborhood, we did that way.
do,
So
okay.
There's the one street of Lylewood Glen that's single family, and then the rest of Lylewood Glen is townhomes.
Yeah,
So the
and they are right
townhomes-
adjacent. Thank you for reminding me. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I think more people are used to seeing in, like you're mentioning, maybe a
Yeah.
townhouse and a single family. And this is actually, even a little bit less separation, kind of with
Yeah.
2 detached products, but just one has that association.
Right, okay.
I got a question. I'm still kind of just wrapping my head around the villa. Do you have like an approximate square footage for the residence, what it will be? Just that, I'm just trying to equate it in my head. I mean, I'm thinking I don't want to call it a detached townhome because I know it's not a detached townhome, but that's all I can kind of see in my head right now.
Yeah. You're talking overall square footage?
Right, I mean, is it like a,
Trying to think of what the building.
2,000,
Probably about
1,500?
1,800 to 2,400, somewhere
Okay.
through there. Some of them will have, some have an opportunity for a 2-car garage, some have an opportunity for a 3-car garage.
still a good size?
Yes. yes.
residents, it's just a little bit.
Yep, again, it's really more focused on, I guess, the people who have now moved out of their big single families and looking to have something that does have less maintenance, or maybe some entry level that are coming out of, I shouldn't say entry level, but coming out of a townhouse and want to get into a single family, but they might not have kids yet, and they're not looking to have the big yard and the two-story
Right.
house.
Thanks.
Okay, dare I ask about the bluffs? Why can't we determine where the bluffs are?
We have a pretty good idea of where the bluffs are, and we believe that they're primarily in Outlot C on the southwest corner of the site and Outlot D on the southeast corner, and they're, Dan, was there any,
So they're in the outlots?
they're in the outlots, and that's the intent here.
Okay.
The notes that you're seeing in some of the comments from the city engineer are really related to that it was based on some LiDAR contours, and we just want surveyor confirmation of
So
the.
but preliminarily, we're thinking there's no issue with bluff setback or ordinance or anything because it is in the outlots?
Correct, we're not worried about it, there might be some tweaking.
Sure, when we get final measurements. Okay. Okay. Where do you envision sidewalks going?
There are sidewalks that are going to be along each one of the streets, on one side of each street.
And on the drawing that's on your screen,
Yeah.
adjacent to the streets, you can see that there's a thicker, dark black line.
Oh, that's what that represents. Thank you.
That's the sidewalks.
Okay.
And then adjacent to Spring Creek Drive, on the south side of Spring Creek Drive, will be a trail that's an extension of the existing trail through the Spring Creek neighborhood.
Say that last sentence one more time.
Sure. On Spring Creek Drive on the north side of the plat,
Yes.
so Old 212,
Yes.
as you go west of this property in the Spring Creek neighborhood, there's that existing trail that's running on the front of the lots instead of a sidewalk. So that's proposed to be extended across and adjacent to Spring Creek Drive
Okay.
in a similar manner to how it's going through the Spring Creek neighborhood. And then that will continue to the east. There would still be a small segment that the city would need to construct to connect between the northeast corner of this plat and Mount Hope Road, and then we'll complete that loop of trail.
Okay.
I have a question on where is I understand there's a minimum, and I'm just reading this from the packet, a minimum of 50% of common open space is required. Any PRD excerpt with the single-family subdivision. What part of it counts?
Well, and that was one of the comments that we had to the developer in our comment letter, so we'll be looking from them for some calculations to verify that it exists, or for it to be created if it doesn't exist, and then compare it back to the ordinance requirements. So that is sort of an outstanding issue that we'll sort through between tonight's meeting and when this goes to the city council.
Okay, that makes me feel better, because I don't see it on there.
Yeah, typically it's in the outlots. If you, just as an example, the Spring Creek neighborhood to the west of this, just because we're all pretty familiar with that one. In their case, because of the natural resources that existed within the bluff and the trail that was constructed for the snake trail, that area was able to count as their open space.
Okay.
So it's not necessarily an improved active open space with a tot lot and play fields or something like that. It can be, but it's not necessarily that.
And I believe you indicated that the southernmost pointing road or connection there will likely only be just access to the property to the south?
Correct.
Okay.
As you keep going to the south, there's a pretty significant bluff.
Right.
and then before you hit the Snake Road again.
Okay.
So it likely will terminate somewhere within the properties that exist to the south of this without connecting again to another road.
Right, because I believe, isn't that the reason why there's that sort of stripped land on the western side, right? That they need access to that property to the south?
That is what we think that strip of land is there for.
Okay, so potentially it could be addressed by that connection there?
Correct.
Okay. But that still has to be worked out before this plat can be approved?
Well, no, this preliminary plat would address that connection to the south, so that there's a road stub that goes to the south. The strip of land, that's the 16.5-foot
Yeah.
strip between the properties, that in its entirety does not need to be addressed before this preliminary plat is approved, but the connection point for Green Ash Drive needs to be resolved. We have to have a way to get across it, to put Green Ash Drive in.
Okay, so I'm sorry, I'm looking at April, from you, Cindy, to the Trinity Development dated April 12th. It's somewhere in our packet, page 54 in my electronic copy. Item number 2 says the preliminary plat cannot be approved as shown until sufficient control over all property is required to make the connection is established.
Correct, and that's referring to the Green Ash connection.
Green Ash connection.
So,
Help me.
west of this plat, you can see, it's not labeled, but Green Ash Drive comes to the south and it terminates in a cul-de-sac.
Okay,
And so that would be extended and become their southernmost east-west road.
Yes.
There. So there has to be a way to,
connect the two pieces of property over that 16-foot wide piece of land.
yes, in just that area.
In just that area. Okay, I got it. Okay, okay.
Just so I can clarify all of that, it is included in the preliminary plat, that piece.
They have, in their engineering plans, have shown the connection.
Okay. So the intent is there.
That's their intent, but
Okay.
because they don't have ownership control over that 16.5-foot wide strip of land, or that portion of it, as the preliminary plat is right now, we can't approve it today. You can recommend to the council, and we can sort through that issue.
Right.
Between now and when the council makes a decision.
Okay.
But,
So we can move forward with that piece of it, knowing that that's a to-do.
correct, it's just a to-do.
Okay, I noticed retaining walls were mentioned, so maybe they're actually shown in this diagram. Is it on the back side, south side of lots 1 through 5 on block 2, and back side of 11 through 13 on 6, and 1 through 3 on block 4? Are those retaining walls, those lines?
I'll defer to the city engineer.
These are the little dash line.
No,
Dash.
the dark, thick line. Where are they called out?
Yeah, there's some retaining walls up along Spring Creek Drive between, if that's what you're saying, between Block 2, Lot 1 through 5, and then,
Thank you.
yeah, on Lot 1 through 3.
Yep.
On the south side, right where that road will
Yep,
be
Block
extended
4,
to the
yep.
south. Yeah. And I thought that was the major, there might be a little retaining wall up on 11, 12, 13 too. So yeah, there are some retaining walls that they're proposing with this plat.
Okay. You want to open the public hearing?
Okay, so no other questions regarding the rezoning or the preliminary plat, right? From our end. So then we can move forward with opening the public hearing. Thank you. So anything else?
Just
As
open
far
the
as
public hearing
opening-
and invite anyone from the public to speak that would like to make a comment.
Is there anybody from the public who wish to speak on these topics? Or comment? No? I think we're good. Anything on your end?
No, if there's no one who would like to speak, you can close the public hearing and then proceed to deliberate on if you'd like to make a recommendation.
So we'll close the public hearing.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'll make a motion to recommend rezoning from agricultural to public institutional and R2 PRD. That's correct?
I'll second that.
Do we need to add the comments to that?
And that's what I was going to ask, what the
Oh,
conditions?
sorry. Subject to
comment.
city planner and city engineer comments.
Just 1 through 7, point C, I think. And then you second.
I'll second that.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
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 I'll make a motion to recommend the approval of the preliminary plat for the Meadows at Spring Creek Addition, subject to the conditions in the staff reports.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great. Moving on to new business. Point number 6.
Thank you. At your last two meetings, you have reviewed and heard proposals from two different developers for the redevelopment of the 926th Street West property that most people know better as the bus garage site. And tonight, we're asking you to make a recommendation to the city council on which of the two proposals you would like to see them consider. In your packet, in addition, we've put the proposals back in your packet for to refresh your memory on both of them. If you recall, back at the February meeting, you heard the proposal from CCR Homes, and at your March meeting, you heard the proposal from Shingaby Builders. Also in your packet is a very preliminary memo from the city's financial consultant, Springstead, and where they kind of share some high-level financial pieces about both proposals. And we've also included for you, for your consideration, sort of an evaluation matrix that compares back to the original request for proposals that was sent out, and provides some preliminary comments on whether they were responsive to the RFP or not responsive to the RFP, and tries to compare them as much as we can. The two proposals, as you recall, were quite different in nature. One, the proposal from CCR Homes, was to have the city tear down the building, do the environmental remediation, install streets and utilities, and grade out and pad lots, and then sell to them finished lots for 6 twin home units, so a total of 12 housing units. The Shingaby proposal is a bit different than that. Under their proposal, they would do the development work, and then, subject to a market study to determine what types of senior units are most in demand for the Carver site. And that could range from anything from a market rate, kind of an apartment unit that's independent living, all the way to something with some varying degrees of services that are provided. So it could be anything along that whole senior housing spectrum, depending on the results of a market study. But they then would go in and do the work of tearing down the building, doing the environmental remediation, and all the construction work, of course, associated with that. So like I said, we've laid out this evaluation matrix. We'd ask you to deliberate on your thoughts on the two different proposals, ask any questions. I'll be happy to try to answer anything that I can, and hopefully make a recommendation to the council.
No, this is not a public hearing.
This is not a
Component.
public hearing. Under either scenario, just so you're aware from a public review standpoint of the development process, either one of those would end up coming back through here for plating and site plan work. So there would be a lot of opportunity for public comment
At that time.
during that process.
Okay.
And I have a question on the process. So if we recommend one, the city council will still look at both? Or would they only consider the one we recommend?
We would let them certainly have information on both
Okay.
proposals. Because it's hard to say that you're recommending this one, but not know what, you know,
Okay.
what else you considered at the same time.
So I've got a couple questions, and maybe this is catch up since I was absent the last two meetings. So do we have any indication on, I guess I'll just say the Shingabee proposal, it'd be one larger unit, right? So the CCR proposal is basically 12 units, right? Do we have a comparison? Are we talking 60 potential like apartment units, or is it, do you have a scale, I guess, as to what?
Well, they have a square foot amount that they
had a-
listed.
Yeah, they had a square foot amount, but in their, that
It
question
just
was.
says 40 to 60.
Yeah, and that question was
I
sort of.
didn't catch that, sorry.
40 to 60,
40
it
to
really
60.
depends what they think the marketplace will demand for what
Unit.
mix of products, but 40 to 60 units.
The one's much more dense.
Well, what it really boils down to is if it's more independent living, where they might have a lot of apartment units that are, say, one bedroom or two bedroom, maybe a den, you know, the units are bigger then, and so you can fit fewer units on the property. As opposed to if you're going to something that's, you know, pretty far down the spectrum, maybe in memory care or something where the units themselves are smaller, then you can
Okay.
accommodate
And
more.
it certainly could be like a mixed-use building,
Correct.
depending on whatever the market analysis comes
That's all
back
gonna
at.
bear out of the market analysis.
Right.
Okay.
And it would be a multi-story building.
I think it's limited at two-story.
Right.
That's what I read.
or the
Is that what you
single-story
understood?
twin homes.
They have done a lot of 3 stories, but I think their proposal said 2, and that's
Yep,
sort of.
That's what I recall.
I didn't do my math, but when you compare like square footage of the twin homes combined to the square footage of what this building would be, not from the 2-level, but because they were like 1,400 square foot per unit, so that's times 12, right? Whatever that is. What number is that? Whoever's got a calculator. So I think it just helps like from a footprint standpoint
Right.
to kind of think of what that would be, you know? Versus what they're saying is a 50 to 80,000 square foot, you know, divided up into 2 stories.
Right, so 1,400 square feet times 12 would be just under 17,000 square feet.
17,000, okay. And they're talking 50 to 80, but 2 or 2 stories tall, okay. From the financial standpoint, is there an estimate? So when you look at the CCR proposal and a lot of the work that needs to be done from Carver's standpoint, meaning the utilities, the mediation, environmental mediation that needs to be done, plus the, what's the other word, for all of the lots. I mean, they have to be ready to go, right? And you're doing the developmental work too. The planning part is what they want. What is the cost approximately from a resource standpoint? Is that something tangible?
You know, it is and it isn't. They had a number within their proposal of what they were estimating that to be. It didn't include, you know, the city staff and consultant time that would be involved, because if we were doing the development, certainly there would be a lot of soft costs as well. The either development scenario, You know, they both provided some preliminary numbers, but either one of them would have to be refined. And so we didn't try to run a financial analysis because whatever the preferred project is would have to be more fully developed before we could actually get a good handle
Numbers on that.
on the financials. So if you go and look, though, at the memo that Mr. Steinman provided to you, he did do some preliminary comparisons between the two. And I can just kind of tell you from a very high level that, you know, the primary difference between the two proposals is that CCR Homes relies upon the city being the developer and then selling to them finished lots that are ready to pull a building permit on, which means the city takes all the risk and puts up all the money up front. And then we would basically be reimbursing ourselves through the tax increment district that they're proposing to be installed upon the site over time. The other project also relies upon some amount of tax increment financing that's an unknown amount, but would likely generate a much larger increment first off to work with in that financing, and would likely not take increment from the district for as long of a period of time. So it's sort of they're not an apples to apples comparison just because of who's doing the development and who's taking the risk.
Right.
So on the Shingabee one, they do the development and they take the risk.
And they're both utilizing TIFs from a financing standpoint?
They both contemplate the utilization of TIF.
The
It's
known,
very clear in the CCR one that TIF would be very much needed to finance all that infrastructure going into the site. And that it would likely utilize as much TIF as possibly could be generated from the project and still require some grant funds possibly as well, just based on their proposal on how they lay out their finances. The Shingabee one, it looks like, just again at a really high level before we have more and better numbers to do a deeper dive into it, it doesn't look like the city would have to rely upon a tax increment district that went quite as long. And what that really means is that we're diverting the increased market value that's created on the site. Instead of collecting those new taxes and being able to use them in the city's general fund, we divert those to pay back the development costs.
Okay,
So
here.
basically, it looks like the Shingabee one could come back on the city's tax rolls quicker,
right,
At a higher value.
at a higher value.
from a market value
Right,
standpoint.
exactly. Okay, so here's my 2
Double
cents.
from a market value,
Yeah.
right?
So when we did our original proposal, right, and when we envisioned what we wanted to do with this site, we thought this was such a great, unique opportunity for the city to really dictate how we wanted this piece of land developed. We don't ever get that opportunity, other than, generalized comprehensive plan. This is residential, this is industrial, this is commercial. We wanted to really target it and be specific. And, the city and a lot of the feedback from the community have talked a lot about life cycle housing, having a variety of housing types, allowing people to stay in the community as they age, right? And we just don't have a lot of housing for, for our older citizens, right? And or options, right? If somebody needs some kind of care, we don't have a lot of options within the city. So we wanted to try to provide that with this piece of land. And I have to say I favor the Shingabee proposal because it offers that variety of care options. I also heard in the proposal that because they would have care providers at this facility, they could also provide in-home care throughout our community, which brings another amenity to our community that we don't have.
And employment.
And employment, absolutely. It's a higher value, right, for the city of a property that has been tough over the past decade, right? And And also that they've shown success with this type of facility integrated in a residential area in smaller communities, right? That they target smaller cities like our size, and this works really, really well, and it's a great amendment to the city. I mean, this will be an advantage for Carver for decades, right? And I don't mind that it's a little bit bigger. I don't mind that it's more units. I think it's just, it's going to have longevity here and can provide a lot of value to our community and our city.
You know, I'd have to agree with you, Joy. I was leaning towards the Shingle Bee proposal myself. And one of my reasons, too, is the other proposal is more of just townhomes.
Twin homes, yeah.
Yeah, and we have that available in our community, probably not exactly like this, but there's plenty of that available or coming to be available, I think, similar opportunities for housing like that. And I think we also went with the premise, or we're really thinking that it's a life cycle housing, and I think about the location of it. And so the residents that may live there, or that are going to live there, and their families are going to come and visit, there's a nice park really close by to take your children to. The disadvantage, you know, is there's not that restaurant or whatever really within walkable distance, but you can walk a mile downtown, maybe push, you know. But I just think that particular product and proposal is an excellent fit for this property.
I forgot to mention, I also liked that there was less risk for the city, right? We're not
Yeah.
having to put up a whole lot. We're not having to continue to caretake this property.
Right,
Like, I feel like, you know, we've been doing.
When you look at it from a financial health
Yeah.
standpoint.
Yeah.
Even the development takes all the risk off
Yep, us.
the city. Yeah. Which I assume the city would prefer not to assume risk on development if they didn't have to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, plus, when we did dream about this plan,
Yeah.
we specifically dreamt
Yeah.
for assisted living
We did.
or some type of life cycle,
Some kind of
55
care.
plus type
Yeah.
of place, right?
Yep. Or some place that could offer care along with living and staying in the community, which we don't have.
As far as the mitigation process of the land, I mean, that's going to be done regardless on either option. But with the CCR option, it's done upfront by the city, and we pay for that, meaning the city, right? With the Shingaby option, it's done, but it's looked at least in the preliminary proposal, as a shared expense.
Correct.
Go
So-
up to negotiation.
Right, so in the CCR proposal, because the city would be acting as developer, the city would be doing all the environmental remediation and testing on the site. Under the Shingaby proposal, they contemplated some shared responsibility, and that would be something that would have to be negotiated between the city and Shingaby if they're selected as part of a development agreement.
Any other thoughts or comments from anybody else?
So I guess one clarification, and I'm not trying to
Yeah, no, you weren't here for
pop the
something.
balloon here, but so if Shingaby would get this, they would run their market analysis and determine what they think is the best fit in here.
In the mix, yeah.
Is that the potential that it would not be an assisted living then? And we said everybody likes that idea.
Right.
If they're gonna run their analysis and they don't find that,
As a
that's the
need.
best fit, right?
Right, so what are your
Right,
thoughts,
so-
Cindy?
My thoughts on that are that they did contemplate in their proposal that it could be anything along the spectrum from independent living to something with extensive services. So certainly independent living doesn't have any kind of assistance services associated with it, but they have always talked about senior living as opposed to other types of apartments maybe.
Right.
But that is something that, the way they drafted their proposal, they really do rely upon the market study to tell them what is in demand and needed in this area. So it is something that if that was a concern that certainly some caveats could be written into the development agreement, and you would be reviewing the actual product proposed if they get that far and if they're selected, of course,
Right.
through the development review process.
Right.
And also with that site, this site is guided in your comprehensive plan for low-density residential, so with the Shingaby proposal, they would have some extra entitlement development steps related to a comprehensive plan amendment
Sure.
as well to increase the density on the site.
Yep.
That's something that can be, any risk associated with that could be mitigated by running all entitlements through at the same time. So looking at everything from the comp plan amendment to the site plan, all together as one package, so that you know exactly what you're getting.
Yeah. Okay. It's a good question, though. Yeah.
But I guess we could, so there could be negotiations that the city could
Yeah.
recommend that we would like to see this if possible, and if there's a large gap between what they see, that there could be discussions and some sort of compromise if the city felt strongly enough about it.
There could be, but I think, I think the reality of it is that if they didn't think from an economic standpoint that they could make it work, the market study would be part of their due diligence. And if the city and they were not seeing eye to eye on it, then it would just
They would
not
with-
progress
So
from
probably-
that
Right,
point.
so they would withdraw their
Yeah. Yeah.
proposal,
Right,
potentially.
potentially.
Go back out for RFP. Right.
Start all over.
We'd start over, yeah. Okay.
I have a little input to offer, and I'm torn. I mean, I think they're both great products, proposals, and that we don't have that much of a need as far as the CCR homes. We don't have the need met for the one-level townhomes. So it does fulfill that, and it just blends in more with that residential area. Is there any other, the Shingapi? Is there any other land that we could have them look at, like the water treatment plant, and then it could be even bigger, as far as it could be a 3-4
Right next to
story building?
single-family homes, too.
Water, oh, yeah.
Yeah, I live on the other side.
But also, that area though, just, it's, I mean, you could have a nice access, maybe it would need the bridge, but just around the bluffs, just that natural surrounding, could be a beautiful, almost campus for a larger project of this nature. So I feel like we're just kind of stuck in this small middle where we could go really big if we moved somewhere else.
So that's,
It's
would be an opportunity for discussion after they do their market analysis? Or you're thinking like, don't give up on both? I mean, you're thinking bigger than,
Yeah, that's another city-owned property,
Right.
right?
That was
Yep.
my question.
Right,
I
it's
mean, how
another
can we-
city-owned
we could
property
potentially
that's,
accommodate both options? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I guess you'd have like 3 options then, yeah.
Which I hadn't contemplated at all.
I don't know if it's fair to discuss a different property, and I only say that because the
yeah.
city council hasn't
Yeah.
provided us with any requests for the planning commission to make any recommendations regarding the former wastewater treatment plant site.
Yep.
And I don't know that they've had any real discussions about the use of that site.
right.
Okay.
We basically just ruled it out from a city hall standpoint.
Right.
Well, sort of. Okay. So sticking with what we know, when you look at the risk to the city, I guess, versus the service or the product, that they're
Yeah, there's a,
offering, without duplication of what we already have, and then the financial health of the potential, project and tax implication.
I guess my point is the one downside with the Shingaby, thank you. It's one of those words I shouldn't look at it when I'm trying to say it, is there's no room to expand on it.
There's no, so,
Like,
To grow, you're
right,
saying.
yeah, if our need
So
increases for that.
You're thinking about the development up in Chaska that's across from Coles, kind of like that?
I'm familiar with Auburn Manor in Waconia, so that's what really has me
That's what
thinking
they've
about
done.
this, and that's a project that they've done.
Meadows in Waconia.
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I don't know. I mean, when I was listening to the Shingabee presentation, when they talked about St. Joseph, they did one building like this, right? That was similarly sized, and that was sized appropriately for their community. And I thought, right, we're not larger than St. Joseph, right? I figured that would be, this was appropriately sized for our community. I don't know. And I mean,
if their market analysis comes back different,
oh, totally.
then it's
Yeah,
a, it's
yeah,
a
yeah,
different,
yeah.
then it's another
I'm with you.
discussion, you know?
You know, and I mean, this, it is in the middle of single-family homes, yes. There is already a berm there that, you know, kind of obstructed the commercial site that was there. So I feel like it's already kind of isolated a little bit. That's just my perception. I don't live right there, so I can't say, but, you know, that's kind of my perception about how this land is structured right now. I kind of like that it's in the middle of our community, meaning surrounded by single family, adjacent to park, adjacent to downtown, and that's a good fit for someone who wants to stay in community. I don't know. And
I agree with that.
we also talked about how tall is this building going to be, right? And are the single families going to be seeing it above the berms and the trees? You know, is it going to tower or something like that? And I think when we looked at some of the heights and the sight lines and the elevation of this property, we didn't think we would exceed that, right? If we stayed around, and we can see that, right, in the preliminary plat and those sorts of things. We can evaluate heights and
Right,
all that in
again,
detail.
if Shingabee's selected, that project would have to come through with applications from everything from a
Right.
comp plan amendment
We
all
can
the
look
way
at
to the
that.
plat and site plan.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can certainly look at the height and the architectural.
Right, and make sure about the fit, right? But we thought a two-story facility because it is taller than a one-story already, the building that's there, with the roof and everything.
Right.
So, I don't know,
And I think their proposal was contemplating 2 stories and not
yeah, taller
3.
than that.
You know, it's hard because some of their pictures had examples of 3-story buildings,
Yeah,
but there was text within their proposal that talked about a 2-story building.
yeah, that's true. Oh, we found a picture of a two-story in Bagley?
The Bagley site.
Bagley site. Yeah,
Happy to get lucky and be on that page.
so,
And then whatever proposal is recommended, we'll all have opportunity for public hearing down the road, correct?
Correct, under either proposal.
To address that, you know, those concerns.
I'll make a motion to recommend the Shingabee proposal for the 926th Street West redevelopment.
I'll second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so moving on to 6.2, street, 2017 street improvements and utilities. Gotta get to it. Here we go.
Thank you. This project is before, or projects, I should say, is before you tonight to make a finding that they are in compliance with your comprehensive plan. Since the city engineer is here, I will defer to him to kind of tell you what the projects, just an overview of what they are.
Thank you, Cindy. Yes, these two projects are part of what the city's been looking at and trying to complete some of the remaining streets in downtown Carver that don't have curb and gutter or the more newer design storm sewer. So the work is going to involve reconstructing the streets, putting in some new water services to some of these existing homes. Public Services had looked at the age of the water services, and over the years they've changed the material type that they are using in all the services in Carver. So they want to upgrade all the water services to their new standard and replace them. There's a little bit of sanitary sewer that's being done. When the original downtown work was placed back in the mid-'80s, it was kind of what they call a gray water system where each home actually had a septic tank, and then it drained to the street where it had the gravity sewer that went to the treatment plant. And so over the last several years, the city has been abandoning those tanks, but there's still a few places in town where there's some service lines where the city says, well, we need to add a new manhole here to just better serve these properties. The stretch of Broadway from 4th to 6th Street is going to be a continuation of kind of the downtown look with kind of a little more decorative tooled concrete sidewalk going up from 4th Street all the way up to Broadway, where the existing trail runs on the south side of 6th Street, and then there's also the trailhead that goes up to Lions Park. There'll be new street lights that are placed along that corridor, and actually a clock that the city is looking at adding at the corner of the, I call it the Nimala building. So it would be if you're at 4th Street and Broadway and you're going to head up the hill, it's going to be right on your right side there at 4th and Broadway, so the northeast corner.
So it is, so you mentioned that. So my question was, I mean, I get the question, are these in compliance with the comprehensive plan? But I look back to the downtown plan, right?
Sure.
And so I assume we're continuing that vision that we had, right? Because we had mapped all of it out, right?
Right. There's some of the aspects, there's going to be trees, and I think one of the things in the downtown study was like a colored parking area. At least the council and staff have felt that at this time they won't be, it'll just be the bituminous or asphalt. You know, it's kind of like a piano keyboard. With the ivory keys and then the black.
Some of it is incremental improvement as well. So they did utilize the downtown master plan as an information piece in the design factor.
Okay.
But if you introduce something like the colored concrete in that area, it looks disjointed from the rest of the downtown
Right.
at this point in time.
Right. But it's going to look like it all the
Yes,
same,
it's all
the way
coordinated, and
along
it-
Broadway.
Yes,
Okay.
it extends sort of that theme that we have going and makes, definitely some of those improvements that were in the downtown plan.
Are we keeping the diagonal parking?
So that, it was, right, we're keeping the diagonal parking on the, as you're heading up
As
to
the
6th
east
Street
side.
on, right, the east or
Side.
right side. But the city is also looking at adding diagonal parking on the left side, at least for that first block
Yeah.
up to close to Fifth Street, maybe just a little bit south. And then the rest of the way will be parallel parking on both sides of the
Yeah.
street. So that was one of the things that in looking at parking in downtown, and because you have a wide right-of-way on Broadway, there was room to get diagonal parking on both sides. Some of the concepts from the downtown master plan study that was done, there will be bump outs at 4th Street
Yeah.
and Broadway. We also are looking at adding bump outs at 3rd Street West and Broadway. So at one time, the city had looked at that a few years ago, and they just felt as long as 3rd Street is being reconstructed, they'll look at adding bump outs there. Also, 3rd Street West, right now as people come from the west and head east to turn on Broadway, there is some difficulty in some sight lines because everyone's parking.
Yeah.
So the city did look at making 3rd Street West a one-way going from east to west. So that will be different for people, but it'll be.
That would be different for people.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of discussion on the actual 3rd Street Bridge over
Yeah.
the discussion, and the city is looking at making that a one-way. At one time, there was a discussion of whether we put 2 cul-de-sacs and just stop the street there. There's discussions on reconstructing the bridge, but there's some funding issues at the state level on bridges and the city's timing of trying to do these improvements. So we're looking at delaying really any bridge improvements, although there is some work we're going to do on the south side of the bridge because of some erosion that's occurred over the winter. So there will be some work on the bridge, but in general, the existing bridge will stay. We'll put our one-way street in, and then we'll still continue, discussions and watching the condition of that bridge over the next several years. So that's a little, you see this Broadway storm sewer flood station, that at one time was going to be part of this project, but there's just been some discussions here in the last several weeks that we decided to pull that out of this project. That will come back at a later time to the council for discussion. So on this, at least figure, you could cross it off on your.
Okay, so we're just doing utilities in.
Right,
street
so it's
improvements.
2,000, so the utilities will just be on Broadway and Third Street, and then those side streets, Ash, Jorgensen, and Hickory. The actual utility part of the stormwater flood station will be pulled off at this time and looked at a later date.
You can do it when we totally revamp that whole river access piece,
Yes.
right?
Well,
The
it's
downtown plan, that was like phase 3.
Yeah, that was a future, that building will go, and then the levee.
Yes.
But although we're going to be doing this levee study is being discussed coming up here in the next several weeks or months at the council.
So what is the time frame of this?
So the time frame of this would be to actually advertise and open bids in early May, bring the bids back to the council meeting at their second meeting in May, and then construction, the earliest construction would be probably sometime in June. So we do anticipate the Broadway stretch being started first by the contractor, because we're going to have stipulations that certain things need to be done by Steamboat Days on Broadway. And Third Street will probably continue after that. And we'll have to, talk with the Steamboat Days committee, because I know some of, their route would come up and maybe end on Third Street, but more than likely Third Street is going to be still maybe a little messy, depending on how fast the weather cooperates, et cetera.
Okay, sounds good.
Any further questions?
No.
So I'll make a motion to recommend the proposed improvements is in compliance with the comprehensive plan.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, to communications.
We're happy to answer any questions that you might have about anything that was in the staff monthly reports that are in your packet.
So? I have nothing.
Everybody good?
Good. Where are we going to see you next month? I'm not going to be here. No, I'm not here next month. I'm out of the country.
Ooh, that sounds like a good reason.
I already duly noted that.
We need to vote on the chair, right?
Oh,
yeah, that's
we
right.
moved the
Item.
agenda.
We did.
We adjusted the agenda for selection of chair and co-chair, which we'll address at this time. Is there anybody interested in either of the positions?
Do you want to keep doing it?
I'd be glad to do that. So who'd like to be a partner?
Co-chair. So your
The
backup,
co-chair.
just in case she's not here. You're here a lot.
I can do it.
You're volunteering?
Sure.
Awesome.
Okay.
Oh, I don't think I can recommend myself.
I'll recommend Joy.
Yes, you can. Yes, you can.
All right, I will make a recommendation for Jennifer to be chair and myself to be co-chair. Is that legal?
I second that.
I was going to too.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
That was nice, quick. Okay, so we can, if there's no other
Make
comments
a
or
motion to
concerns.
adjourn.
Okay.
I make a motion to
Second.
adjourn.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.